All right, I do believe, Martina, we are ready to get underway.
That's
And
correct.
good evening to everyone. Welcome to a special council meeting for the township of Douro-Dummer. We understand there are a number of people in the wings, and we certainly welcome you. Before I begin, we remind you the meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the township's YouTube channel. I'll call the roll for members of council. Deputy Mayor Moher, Councillor Watt,
Present.
Councillor Landsman, and Councillor Watson.
Also present.
Our CAO is with us as well, Alana Arthurs. Alana, there she is in the middle of my screen anyway. And our clerk, Martina Jade Hartwig. Martina is here as well. So with all council in attendance, we'll call the meeting to order at exactly 6 o'clock. And the reason for this special meeting tonight is for indeed one reason and one reason only, and that is to see a presentation from our CAO, Alana Arthurs. And the subject is off-road vehicles on municipal roads. And this is indeed a decision that council has to make. And of course, council are wanting to hear from the public before any opinions are being expressed. So that's what this meeting is about. We are after your opinions on that concept. It's that simple. We respectfully acknowledge that we're on the treaty and traditional territory of the Mississauga and Anishinaabe, and we offer our gratitude to the First Nation peoples for their care for and their teachings about our earth and our relations. May we honor those teachings. Is there any pecuniary interest with anyone on the subject? Could I have a motion, please, to adopt the very limited agenda? Sheila and Heather, all in favor? That motion is approved. Okay, we go to delegations, petitions, presentations, and that's the reason for the meeting tonight. Off-road vehicles on municipal roads. We're going to be hearing from Alana Arthurs. She will give an introductory presentation to set the stage for exactly what we want to hear. We want to hear your opinion. We're hoping that we can get the meeting done in a reasonable time. We know it's a nice night out and there's a hockey game on and all those fun things, but we're here to listen to you, and we'll kind of end the meeting, I guess, when we've heard all the opinions, and we'll try not to duplicate too many statements. We also would ask you, before you make your comment, to give us your name and the township that you live in. Okay? Very simple. Your name and the township that you live in, so we know who we're talking to. If you are not willing to come on the screen here on the Zoom video, you can also use the chat feature, and Martina will read all the chat messages as we go through. We've also received a number of emails and other comments on the subject that have been gathered, and they will be part of the final presentation and the final recommendation from staff that council will have the opportunity to debate and finally vote on this issue. So tonight, all we're doing is listening. Members of council are not involved in a debate. They are not involved in a decision. We are all here simply and only to listen to you. So, without further ado, I am going to turn things over to Alana and then Martina. And I just do remind you, I will be turning the chair over to Deputy Mayor Moher shortly into the meeting as I have another commitment. So, Carl, you can get ready to listen and to finally end the meeting, whenever that is. Okay? So thank you for doing that. Alana, it's all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to ask Martina actually to share the presentation, and I can just go through it. I'll let you know when I need you to turn this on. So our presentation this evening is simply just on the background and where we're going as a township with regards to off-road vehicles. We definitely are here to get your comments and your feedback. Go ahead, Martina. So the intent of the meeting tonight is to hear from those that have comments on the use of off-road vehicles in the township. We're going to review just kind of the history on it for those of you that aren't familiar, what has transpired in the township to date and our current status, the changes in the legislation and how it impacts the municipality. And then we've outlined some options for consideration and discussion for this evening. Okay, Martina. So just a quick background, and I will touch on some of these points as we go forward. So following the changes in the regulations, which essentially allowed municipalities to open up all of the municipal roads for off-road vehicles. Previous to that, we had to have a bylaw that allowed for it, and the change in legislation actually allowed for it and required a bylaw to prohibit it. So to maintain the status quo, in June of 2021, the municipality did pass a bylaw to prohibit the off-road vehicles on the roadways in Douro-Dummer, with the exception of the 12th line and Simpson Road. In September of 2021, there was a presentation to council from the County of Peterborough and Stantec Consulting on options that they had provided for use specifically on county roads as they were going through their transportation master plan. In April of 2022, staff did provide a report to council with the recommendations from the county, and council requested that we have a public meeting to provide an opportunity for consultation from the public. And then following tonight's meeting, we will report back for a decision potentially at the next meeting, but depending on the amount of feedback we receive, if we have additional emails that seem to be coming in, it may not come back until June. Okay, Martina, thank you. Some of the other additions to the legislative changes, historically, the off-road vehicles were ATVs and side-by-sides. The legislation actually expanded the definition. You can flip to the next slide. And it included off-road motorcycles as well as extreme terrain vehicles. So this just allowed for some additional review of what was appropriate on township roads, but the legislation did allow for the expanded uses. Next slide. So the County of Peterborough was going through the transportation master plan, and they ended up doing a review for the off-road vehicles in parallel to that master plan. They wanted to identify any opportunities that might be available throughout the county to support safe off-road vehicle use. They did consult with the public, First Nations, lower tier municipalities, and active transportation users to address the potential concerns and needs related to ORV use on county roads. I know they did make presentations to each of the individual lower tier municipalities, and I think most of the municipalities did offer some public consultation as well. So after they gathered the feedback, they did provide a draft report to council. Municipal staff and county staff met following that report just to go over what they had provided and some of the options that we might see being fit for the township or other options that we could provide to the municipality or to council. A lot of those including municipal roads, because some of the county roads sort of had a path to nowhere. So we took another look to see if there was an opportunity, and the county staff had said, if you want to come back, take a look at your municipal roads, see what makes sense for you. So we did take a look at that. The county did come back with their presentation. You can go to the next slide, Martina. So the current status right now, as I mentioned, is 12th line and Simpson Road leading into the county forest. That is the only area where the ORVs are permitted in the township currently. The next slide, Martina. So this was the presentation from the county and the recommendation from the county for the county road use. So you can see across the top, County Road 6, coming down County Road 4 towards Warsaw, County Road 40, and across the bottom at County Road 8. Some of these roads just they stopped sort of arbitrarily. So we had some discussion with the county and how we might be able to create a loop so that we didn't have vehicles ending with nowhere to go. So we did take a look internally to look at a possible option, and this is by no means something that council has to specifically vote on or that is set in stone in any way. It was just to have a visual on what might be created to allow for additional off-road vehicle use throughout the municipality that just seemed to make a little more sense. So there was a loop. There was some discussion about being able to come into Warsaw, so that's been identified, as well as getting over to the county forest on those existing roads. So this is why we included some of the municipal road use as well, so that the public has an opportunity to make comments both on the county roads and the municipal roads. Next slide, Martina. So really the next steps is for us just to gather your input tonight. We will summarize all of the comments. As I indicated before, we had hoped to bring this back on May the 17th. We have had quite a few comments that have come in just today via email. So depending on what we receive over the next day or two, because we do have to have this report ready for the agenda in the next day or two, if we seem to be receiving a lot, we may have to hold it until June the 7th. So we can come back and summarize all of those comments that are received for council, as well as anything that we hear tonight. And essentially we will communicate that direction back to the county, as well as proceed in whatever way council sees fit on municipal roads. And I think with that, if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them. If for whatever reason I can't, I'm happy to get back to you, and we're happy to hear your comments.
Thank you, Ilana. I believe Jay has left. Okay. Now the next part of the meeting, the open part of the meeting, Martina, I believe you're going to coordinate that, if that's okay. Martina, could you introduce that and talk about some policies that we'd like to follow, if at all possible?
Absolutely. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So we do have a few people waiting in the wings to speak to us. And so I would ask them to raise their hand so that I can put them in an order, and I'll call on you on the order you raise your hand. Each person will be given 2 minutes to speak to council. And if your comments go longer than that, or you'd like to submit additional information, as stated before, you can definitely email us and we can add that to the package as well. If you're not comfortable speaking live, which I can understand, it takes a little bit of practice, you can definitely use the chat function and I will read out your comments for you. As stated earlier, if you could just tell us your name and where you're from, that would be appreciated. So I do see the first person listed, and it is Dorothy Tuckerman. So I will now allow her to speak to council. Dorothy, you just need to unmute yourself and you're ready.
Done. Thank you. I don't sound like Dorothy.
Oh.
my name's Russell Rowe, and Dorothy's here as well. I'm a little bit more comfortable speaking, so if you don't mind, I'll just read something that I've prepared here. I just have about 2/3 of a page of information I'd like to read. And thank you again for the opportunity to speak. We object to opening our roads to off-road vehicles for the following reasons. First of all, using the acronym ORV does not change the fact that these are off-road vehicles. By definition, not a single ORV manufacturer recommends use on roads, whether paved or otherwise, including road shoulders. Honda states in their user manual, ride off-road only, this is quoting, your ATV is designed and manufactured for off-road use only. The tires are not made for pavement, and the ATV does not have turn signals or other features required to use on public roads. If you need to cross a paved or public road, get off and walk your ATV across, close quote. Let's face it, when driving on a road shoulder, you can't avoid crossing roads. We hope council will also take the Stantec study with a large grain of salt, as it is obviously biased toward opening the roads to ORVs. The comparative assessment has some very debatable findings. Under the heading supports public health and safety, well, it scores evenly between opening all roads and opening none at all. This obviously weights the very limited health benefits of driving a self-propelled ATV over the well-documented safety concerns of driving on roads, both for riders and the general public. Encourages tourism. The tourism we currently enjoy depends on the beauty and serenity of nature, which is not compatible with noisy, polluting, and destructive off-road vehicles. Cyclers, paddlers, hikers, and campers will stay away in droves if the natural quiet is lost in favor of noisy off-road vehicles. Improves recreational access and physiological health, perhaps for ORV riders, but to the detriment of everyone else when considering the noise pollution and CO2 emissions, which we can no longer afford. To state that bylaw enforcement and signage costs would increase if the roads continue to be closed to ORVs is ridiculous, They're already closed, and nothing need change with respect to the bylaw enforcement or signage. The report makes a large and questionable assumption that insurance costs would not change if roads were open, but undoubtedly with roads open, there will be more serious accidents and associated litigation. This is not seriously considered and would undoubtedly be very significant expense for taxpayers. It's unfair to taxpayers to increase costs by hundreds of thousands of dollars annually just to improve convenience for a small group who knew the use of ORVs on roads was illegal when they opted to purchase their machines in the first place.
Russell, just so you know,
Thank you.
you're almost out of time.
Okay, thank you. I have one paragraph left. Off-road vehicle riders currently prove time and again that they won't stick to designated routes or speed limits, as is evident along our road on a daily basis. Opening up any roads is a grave mistake that will be very difficult to reverse. We hope the council will not cave to pressure from a persistent few who, by their own admission, are just looking for convenience for the chosen recreational activity, but with no regard for the negative impact they have on the lives of others. Thank you very much again for the time.
Thank you, Russell. Martina?
The next person who has their hand up is Dawn. You'll be with us in one moment. Dawn, when you're ready, you can unmute yourself.
Oh, thank you. First of all, I am been a resident in Douro since 1959. I'm also an owner of 40 years of ATVing. And if I may just add one other thing, I was on the committee that opened up the road in Halliburton. So I think I bring a rather extensive background. Peterborough's MOH researched and found ATV injuries and deaths were increasing at a higher rate than any other land or water vehicle, with most accidents happening on roads, not on trails. Advocating for allowing.
I think we lost Don.
Dawn,
I think he may be muted.
I think so too. Dawn, when you have a second, just unmute yourself and we'll be able to hear you again.
Hello?
Hi, Dawn, we can hear you again. If you just want to start where you were, we lost your audio for a moment.
Oh, okay. Advocates for allowing ATVs on roads seldom mention injuries or deaths. Riders often suffer being thrown, crushed, or pinned, resulting in everything from broken ribs to spinal cord injuries. This area has changed dramatically in the last few years and best described as being Metro Toronto. Metro Toronto, with over 7 million people, has 3,000 ATVers a year visit Halliburton. If roads were open here, hundreds of them would come here because they would save an hour or more on each way, plus half the gas. And they also are finding that much of the areas in Halliburton are being restricted to all ATVs. The Ontario Federation of Agriculture and MNR are both concerned for cut fences, damage to fields, extensive environment damage, and the list goes on. The damage occurs day and long into the night. The OPP are overwhelmed with weekend highway traffic and literally have no time for ATVs, leaving increasing numbers of riders doing anything they want. The strictest regulations are meaningless when not enforced. A council that supports ATVs using roads is subject to being sued if a person is seriously injured or killed. A lawyer stated, the first question each council member will be asked is, what part of the warning on every ATV regarding using roads they do not understand. Thank you.
Thank you, Don.
Deputy Mayor Moher, I don't see anyone else's hand up, but I am monitoring our YouTube channel at the same time, and there have been 2 comments over there. Perhaps I'll read them out and we can give the other folks a moment to raise their hands.
And what's your plan to raise? I think some people advised that they didn't have computer access and wanted certain statements. Are you going to read those statements
Nope.
at some point?
They'll be included in the package with all the other comments that we receive via email.
Okay.
So we've received 2 comments on our YouTube channel. The first one is from Brent Wheatung, who is a resident of the township. I strongly support allowing ATV, UTV on township roads, as this allows access to my registered trap line in Nefton. Council has acknowledged our treaty area as First Nations people. There's also a comment from Sherry Nelson, another township resident. How many of you council members have off-road vehicles? People using township and county roads already. Tell me, what is the difference between snowmobiles and ORVs? Both machines, licensed, insurance. And I now see that John Good and Doug Andrews have their hand up, so I will let them speak to you.
And thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. I'll begin by stating that we're not concerned about the lawful use of off-road vehicles as utility or agricultural vehicles, or about using limited sections of roads and road allowances as connecting links for designated off-road trails, as we're currently doing in our township. But beyond that, however, off-road vehicles do not belong on public roads. You heard before about the warnings on them. The Canadian Off-Highway Vehicle Association and its counterpart, the Specialty Vehicle Industry Association in the US, represent the manufacturers and distributors of these vehicles. They're clear about this in all their print and online materials. Here, for instance, is the SVIA position, and I quote, "ATVs are not designed, manufactured, or in any way intended for use on public roads, urges that on-road use of ATVs be prohibited and that law enforcement efforts be strengthened to eliminate this dangerous practice." Given those warnings, given that position of the manufacturers, it's irresponsible to condone and support operation of ORVs on county roads. It's clearly contrary to their intended use. And I think really this should be all the evidence needed to put the idea of operating ORVs on county roads to rest. If County Council proceeds, though, we need to appreciate that it's taxpayers who will be on the hook. We'll have to fund ongoing roadside inspections, not just the traveled roadway, but the shoulders and the road allowance. Maintenance and improvements where there are hazards that have to be addressed, signs, public education, and all this will come either at the cost of increasing taxes or by taking money from other county programs. At the moment, the likely place for that would be the roads budget, and taking on new and unnecessary spending right now when we're already paying a yearly tax surcharge to address a 10-year backlog of unfunded road maintenance and repairs would be folly. In addition, we in Douro-Dummer will bear direct responsibility for increased policing costs via our contract with the OPP and emergency responses by the township's fire and rescue service. Those are just some of the direct costs. There's also concern about exposing the county and the township to otherwise avoidable risk of potentially expensive insurance settlements and premium increases.
John, you're almost out of time.
Yeah, I'm nearly there. Joint and several liability has transformed municipalities into litigation targets and has forced our municipal governments to settle out of court for excessive amounts. A municipality that's found even 1% liable can wind up paying 100% of court-ordered injury settlements. And because our insurance products are claims made, premiums rise with each claim. This is too great a price to pay. Noise, damage to public and private property, personal injury, and death will increase with little apparent benefit to be had if county roads become designated ORV roads. and our municipal roads in the township, either legally or de facto, will become the feeder routes for that. I've provided a written submission that includes a lot more detail and provides links to the information sources that I've quoted. In closing, I just say the Township of Douro-Dummer's response to the County of Peterborough's proposal to permit use of off-road vehicles on county roads must be an emphatic and unequivocal no. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Martina, is there any more waiting in the wings?
Deputy Mayor, I don't have anyone's hand up, and there's no one in the chat on either our Zoom meeting or in the YouTube. So maybe we'll just give folks a moment if anyone else wants to raise their hand. I see Don has raised his hand for a second round of comments. How would you like me to proceed, Deputy Mayor?
Yes, if it's a quick comment of clarity, I think that would be worthwhile. I'm sure council would want that.
Don, you're able to speak whenever you come off mute.
I just wanted to add, we've already tested whether our own residents would follow the regulations. And the police had said that when you open up one road, you open them all. And we thought we were different. You gave the people an opportunity to display that, yet we have people running on literally every road in the township. And I could give you various examples where if I wasn't driving slow enough on some of the side roads, I could easily have killed 4 people. And they're literally flaunting it. And I don't see how you can reward people. If they were your family, you would not be rewarding them for the behavior that they've been displaying. It's unfortunate, but
Thank you, Don.
thank you.
Martina, is there anyone else?
We have one more comment in our YouTube channel. It's from Harold Nelson, resident of Douro-Dummer. He states, former manager public works, in that capacity, I was never against ORVs, and now as retired president, some roads may need to be looked at. The province believes that we have a legal right, why don't you? And I don't have anyone else raising their hand or posting any comments.
Okay. Well, we've received a fair amount of information in the half hour that we've been going here. And I believe there's a fair amount of emails and comments have been received at the office. So I guess council members, if I speak for council, we'll look forward to all the comments before we debate the issue at a near future meeting. I guess if nothing else, Martina, no more comments or whatever?
We just had one more, sorry, Deputy Mayor.
Okay, no problem.
From Nancy Thompson. She doesn't state where she's from. She says, I agree with caution and warnings that have been shared. I am most concerned with the children riding dangerously already.
Thank you.
And that's all the comments we have.
Okay. Well, that looks to be it. So thank you everyone for participating. Thank you for your research. That's very much appreciated. And I'm sure council will be, or very much appreciate your input. So we will be deciding or debating this at a near future meeting, and feel free to sit in on the YouTube channel to watch that debate. So with no further ado and no further comments or questions, Martina, from anyone?
We haven't had anyone else. We have had, sorry, on the YouTube, Steve Kelly, who's a resident, states, how can ORV survey be considered biased? It seems to me that more people responded in favor of ORVs than against, than had their chance to voice their opinion and did not. And I have no other comments. We do have learned that Nancy Thompson does live in the township.
Okay,
So we've covered everyone now.
okay, thank you very much. And thank you, council. I think if I could have a motion to adjourn until we meet again on this subject at probably our next council meeting or our second next council meeting. So Sheila, and seconded by Heather. All in favor? It's carried. So thank you again, everyone, and have a good evening. May
Thank
the
you.